Hello, everyone. This is Lauren Steiner with the Robust Opposition. I'm back after a pretty long hiatus this summer. I was not working, but I was doing a lot more live streaming than my show. But I'm happy to be back with you tonight with another edition of the Robust Opposition with my studio guests. And they are Jessa Lewis, coming to us from Washington State. Hi, Jessa.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And Lauren Niedel, who is coming to us from Rhode Island. Good evening, Lauren.
Good evening, Lauren. Back to you.
You guys are both running for your state legislatures in your respective states, and you're running in Republican districts. And the other thing that you have in common is that you're both Bernie Sanders delegates. And we were both doing all three of us were doing battle in Philadelphia a little over 2 years ago this month. So let's start with, I'd like you to just sort of introduce yourselves, talk about your, personal and professional backgrounds, why you decided to run for office. Was it Bernie's campaign and his suggestion that we run for office that inspired you? And have you ever held political office before? Let's start with you, Jessa.
Yes. So for me, what inspired me to run for office for the first time was the frustration I felt with trying to get healthcare reform done in the state of Washington. We did what we could. I felt we got pretty close there near the end, but the reality is, if you want the laws to change, then sometimes you have to change who makes the laws. And there was also something to where, you tend to hold up people who are elected to political office on a pedestal. After working with and lobbying, you realize how human they are, and that it is something that is definitely within reach, and that we need more representation that actually represents the people, because the bulk of the people that were there tend to be coming from positions of privilege, and that's why I felt like I needed to step up and run.
So you'd never held any kind of elected office before?
No, I'd worked in politics. I had the honor of being a surrogate and helping with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal's race. I've worked for various candidates for over a decade, including with the state party as part of the coordinated campaign. But this was my first time actually stepping forward and doing it myself.
Great. And how about you, Lauren? Tell your story.
Well, I have a background in political science and women's studies. I graduated with that way back in the 1980s, and I worked on the Equal Rights Amendment campaign in Broward County, Florida in '83. So I have a kind of a long history of being politically motivated. And then Bernie just kind of brought it out a little bit more, let's say. And I've been with Rhode Island Progressive Democrats as well as with our Revolution. So I've been with progressives in the state. Rhode Island is a totally different state than, California and Washington. It's a really small state. Our politics is often as much of an issue. Basically, the issue is more with the Democratic establishment than it is with the Republicans, since there is a stronghold of Democrats in the state. It's one of the bluest, supposedly, in the country. So in order to make changes, I'm on the Democratic State Committee in Rhode Island. And then I ran for town council in my town, which is extremely Republican. That didn't go over so well. So then I decided, well, nobody else is going to run against the Republicans, so it might as well be me. And at least people will have an option and have somebody else to vote for. So there's two different dynamics working in this state.
Well, we have that dynamic in California. We have the establishment Democrats and the progressive Democrats. Democrats have a veto-proof majority, a supermajority here in California. So I think we all three come from Democratic states, but the difference between the two of you and me is that you're both in Republican districts. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how you sort of frame the Bernie Sanders agenda for Republicans. Bernie did a great job, I thought, after the election, going to Trump country. Chris Hayes on MSNBC gave him a platform to talk to Trump voters, and I think it was Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. And, Bernie has really been trying very much to talk to all people, not just Democrats, especially not just progressive Democrats. So how do you guys frame your message to your constituents that you're trying to win over?
My tagline is a progressive leader for rural values. So I don't hide the fact that I'm a progressive. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to hide it or to try to, play it down. I am who I am. People know I'm a Bernie Sanders delegate. People know I'm a progressive. But what people may not know is that my values align with their values. It's about our rural district. It's about, making sure that the small agribusiness is getting accounted for. It's making sure our environment is getting a say. It's for making sure that the people's value are getting heard in the General Assembly, and that's an area that isn't really happening. And because we have a Republican representative, it's even less heard because there's no coalition to get messaging across when you're a Republican in Rhode Island. So running as a Democrat, as a progressive Democrat, I feel that I'll be able to lend my voice stronger in the General Assembly than a Republican can, who will just be, who really won't have any any voice whatsoever. So that's the way I'm running the campaign, and just bringing the ideas that I feel are universal. Hey, we want universal healthcare. That's critical. We want to have strong schools. We want to have an environment that we can, that our water stays clean, where we have well water, that's not polluted, that we stop power plants coming up from, in nearby towns. Those are all values that we all have in my district. And that's what I'm bringing to the table. And I think my voice would actually be heard better if I got in.
Great. Jessa?
For me, it's been a focus on both populist economic issues and also what impacts local communities. We've got Airway Heights, which is the fastest growing municipality in the state, which doesn't have their own junior and senior high school. And in West Plains, we have issues with water security and making sure the water is clean and good to drink and that there's sufficient water. We have roads in disrepair. We've got healthcare, a lack of access to affordable healthcare. So what I have to say, what I found is that as long as we're focusing on the kitchen table issues that everyone can agree upon, it's less about left or right or progressive or, more moderate or center.
Uh-oh. We lost her.
Thank you for accommodating the fact that I was out knocking doors right until this call, and there's not always the best cell service in all areas of the districts, which is one of the things I'll be fighting for, is better internet and broadband and phone connectivity. So basically what I was saying is that it's kitchen table issues, it's things that everyone can agree upon, and then it's not a left or right issue, it's what do we need as a community. And I want to say that I also have been very lucky that I've been supported by Democrats across the aisle, and even Republicans have been showing some support in my race. So I think this is something to where we can really pull it off because people are coming together because they want more.
I think everybody was probably watching the Carrie Evelyn Harris election night watch party. I know that I was. And I took some notes from what she said that I wanted to mention to you guys. Because I'm just wondering if it applies to your race as well. I saw, Jessa, how you promoted this show on your Facebook page. You talked about regular people, and that's exactly what she said. She said, regular people are going to represent regular people. And that's what I think a lot of these people who have been winning, progressives who have been winning their races, represent. They represent regular people, but because she's a regular person, she said she didn't have the time to do a race properly. She originally started last summer, and then she had to drop out because how expensive it is to run a race. Now, she was running for Senate, but she then came back in February, and I have to be honest, I'm pretty astute. I did a whole series this spring called Will the Real Progressive Please Stand Up? And I hadn't heard of her race. So I feel like if she had enough time, she could have won. I mean, she won. Her goal was to get 28,000 votes. She got 35,000 votes. And apparently she only spent $100,000 compared to Tom Carper's $3 million. But that really wasn't what she credited her loss to. It really wasn't a matter of money. It was a matter of time. So what do you think about, she said things just have to be changed to make it easier for regular people to run for office. What are your thoughts about that, both of you? Let's start with Lauren.
Well, I can tell you this, in Rhode Island, it's a part-time legislature. So it runs from January through June. And it runs 3 days a week, basically just Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So right there, you eliminate anybody who needs a full-time job. Most people can't do part-time with it. I'm working this out. If I win, that I'll be able to do this part-time and just make arrangements with my company. I'm hoping anyway. But I think that's a big issue. What we have in the General Assembly in Rhode Island are a lot of lawyers. We have a lot of lawyers. We have a few teachers here and there. We have entrepreneurs. We have business owners, but we have a lot of lawyers who come in with, in my opinion, with baggage. They come in with an agenda, knowing that they're probably going to be working on bills that are going to be mostly for the corporations or for, big businesses or whatever, pool of people that they want to represent, as opposed to representing a larger group or the 99% versus the 1%. So that's a huge issue with Rhode Island. I am a full-time salesperson right now. I'll go down to part-time, and I'll just work that out with my with the company that I work for. But as a full-time person working, from like 8:30 until 5:30, it does limit my accessibility and my access to going out, knocking on doors and things like that. So it makes it way more of a challenge than somebody who's self-employed or somebody that's a lawyer that can have a lot more time to devote to running for office. So that is a problem, and that's why we have a very stagnant General Assembly, because we get the same people every time. We get a couple here and a couple there that don't fit the mold, but for the most part, it's a mold, and you fall into it.
So Washington is also a part-time legislature, which means that it's really hard for working families, for parents, for anyone that needs any sort of stability. We have a short session and a long session that alternate, and that's definitely a situation to where you don't have people who represent regular people as a part of the legislature. They tend to be lawyers or they tend to be retired. And I think that, as was said, we need to make sure we have better representation. And furthermore, running the amount of time that it takes, the amount of money, it is honestly a full-time job. That is a job interview in itself. And I'm glad that I'm making the sacrifices that I am to be a part of it, but I definitely see where it is out of reach for most people.
How is the Democratic Party? Are they helping you? Because
Yes.
You're running in Republican districts, and they have a history of writing off Republican districts. So you're nodding your head. They're helping you?
Absolutely. Well, there was after 2016, there was a bunch of us from across the political spectrum who wanted to see the party be more responsive and more representative. So there was a 70% turnover in the state central committee. We elected a new chair, and a chair who promised and has been delivering on actually investing across the entire state. So we've had year-round organizing, and we're seeing the results of that. I'm also getting extra support because our race is viable, and one of a handful of races it's seen as flippable. So that means I'm actually getting support from the caucuses, from unions, from organizations across the spectrum, and I appreciate being in a spot to where we're seen as in play, and I'm feeling like my little hometown's gonna feel a bit like Ohio by the time we're done, because it's starting to ramp up now.
So I'm not getting support from the party directly. There is still a major rift. Rhode Island progressives in 2016, Bernie won. The establishment Democrats are still upset about that. They still hold a grudge. And so there is this definite them against us, or, and that plays out to the local races. We've got progressives that have We have 3 progressives who the chair primaried to get them out. In my district, I don't have a primary. I'm just running straight against a Republican. It's like, I don't know who they'd rather have in. It's a real challenge when you have a progressive platform to run it. And the other thing is, with Rhode Island, it is a ridiculously small state. You can't get away with anything. Everybody knows everybody from top to bottom. You know, you run into the governor, you run into the Speaker of the House, whenever you're in Providence. It's just like, it's one of those things. So it's a super challenge to run. There has been no effort on the part of the Rhode Island Democratic State Committee, which I am a member of, to go into rural districts and to organize. There's been zero effort. So that's also an issue. I'm also on the Gloucester Democratic Town Committee, and it's pulling teeth to get people involved on the town level. It's really challenging. And we have received no financial assistance from the state committee, whereas the state committee just sent out 5 mailers on the governor's race within 2 weeks.
Now, do you think that it hurts you that you've been? Do you think that it hurts you that you've sort of been on the attack against that governor, that Gina Raimondo, however you pronounce her name? Raimondo?
Oh yeah, and the reason being is that she supports a power plant that's going to the next town over me, which the traffic will go right through the heart of my town, and it's a fracked gas oil burning power plant in this beautiful, rural, pristine area, the next town over from me. So her support in my district is very low, to say the least. Any environmentalist is against her. So yeah, so that is a definite issue. And we have a woman governor. Why don't you support her? All that, And I am getting support from great women candidates and from great women's organizations. I'm endorsed by Planned Parenthood Rhode Island PAC. I'm endorsed by RI Now PAC. So they understand that I'm in a district that I am running. It is going to be a tough race, but they want to see it flipped because the Republican is anti-choice, pro-gun. He's very military, he believes in a strong police, almost he would probably go military style if he could. And he does not have any core values that they want to see in the General Assembly. So it's it's like I think they feel they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't.
Right.
And I'll be honest, I don't make it easier. I consider myself an independent Democrat. I am a Democrat. There's no question about it. I have democratic values. My values are stronger democratic values than many in the General Assembly. But I'm independent because I don't want to be tied down to party politics and be, forced to acquiesce to issues and demands that the party may want to put on me should I win. So, and I have a district that is 70% unaffiliated, which is huge. So of all the people that either voted Democrat in the last 2 primaries or voted in the last 2 elections and voted Democrat at least once, out of those, 70% are unaffiliated. And it's a rural district. So it's like, okay, it's tough because you have to, walk 5 miles to find 5 people.
Right.
So it's a really challenging district, but there's some really great people. I have support. I've been to, I've been to committee meetings in both my two other towns. So I live in Gloucester and I represent Foster and I represent Coventry, and I met with people in both those districts and saying, let's try to get something together to bring people together, let people know that I'm running, let people know that there's a choice, and start a movement of progressives or people with democratic values who want to work together. And if this doesn't if nothing comes out of this year, then maybe in 2020, well, at least we'll get something rolling. And that's part of the idea of my campaign as well.
Yes, and you know, you and I talked privately, and you said that even if you don't win, you're going to consider it a win because you're reigniting Democrats who are sort of moribund in your district. And you know, Carrie Evelyn Harris said the very same thing. She said today is a win, and I think that's because, you know, as Ryan Grimm was saying, it took $100,000 to basically activate a progressive movement in that state. Delaware is also a very small state.
Right.
And both of those senators are representatives of the banks, which is, of course, is the major industry there. And she was asked if she didn't think it was a little reaching to start her career running for Senate. And she said, no, you have to start where there is a hole. So if you've got two senators that are not representing the people and one of them comes up for election, that's where you go. And I thought that was interesting because that's a question I always ask of my candidates who usually are running for Congress, the ones I interview. You know, why are you starting with federal office? You guys are both running for local office, which I think is very smart. But I want to kind of throw the show to you guys now to see if you want to ask each other any questions or share any tips. You know, so take it away.
What I was out doing tonight is we're starting to hold a series of town halls across the district to actually hear from people because knocking on doors, what I've heard overwhelmingly is you're the first person in 20 years that has ever come to talk to me. And that there's a large amount of apathy because there hasn't been that kind of voter engagement. And with half of the district being rural, there's people that I can't reach or connect with directly. And so wanting to make sure that I reach out to their friends, to their neighbors, to invite people to a town hall where they can come and connect with me personally and bring their concerns, and to have a campaign that's issue focused, not on I'm going to be the first woman senator in this seat, that I'm not the other guy. It's more I'm running for these issues because I think we've seen that it's the issues that actually win these races.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to be getting something together with an independent candidate who's running in the in the district next to me, but we have one of the same towns that we run mutually running in, and that's going to be a forum on Lyme disease, which is something that's critical, which affects almost every single household in the district. It's like everybody knows somebody and there's no resources available to people. So we're thinking that that will be a forum that everybody, you know, would be interested in regardless of their party affiliation. And he's a doctor who was previously the head of the Department of Health in Rhode Island. So we're going to get together and have a forum on that. And so I think that's an important idea. And that's an important part of our campaigns, is to draw people together in one place where people have a common area of concern and put away the party and the letters next to your name and work together. And that's why I also think doing this with an independent is also important, because it shows that it's not just about affiliation. It's about the topic and it's about the people.
Another thing that we're working on over here that we're trying to come together beyond party lines is we've got a strong alt-right movement that has been emerging, where there's the hateful posters, the bomb threats, you name it. And that is something to where we've actually been crossing party lines to try to work together to push out the alt-right, to push out the hate. We've had neo-Nazis in the area. We've had those sort of things over, the course of the last several decades. And every couple of years, they pop their head up again and maybe have a new name or a new organization. And right now it's Identity Europa is the main one that's coming forth. And I'm excited about what it means that we're actually coming together and supporting one another as a community and rejecting this kind of outright racism that is threatening our most vulnerable.
Yeah, now you have a little bit more of that in the Pacific Northwest. Is that a problem for you in your Republican district in Rhode Island?
One of the towns that I represent in Foster has the only KKK organized group in the state. Wow. They've been fairly dormant, but I'm scared. I'm nervous about what's going to happen over the next couple of years, there certainly has been a change in attitude. I'm also Jewish in a very rural district that's, 99% white Christian. So that's something else that is, something that, if it can be a problem. It's unfortunate, but it is. And there's a lot of racism. There's a lot of, Trumpism, real staunch Trumpism in my district. Scary sometimes, and that is a concern. And I think it's keeping the Democrats, actually inside. So, we have Facebook pages, for the town that also kind of incorporate, unfortunately, some of that. They try not to, but it's there. And so there is that intimidation factor, I think, that's in my district. And it's wrong. I mean, we've have people, with the Confederate flag in their trucks, no, and people don't see anything wrong with it. People don't see anything wrong with having a Confederate flag in one of the states that was fighting Confederacism, during the Civil War. And there's this disconnect. And we've had in Providence, we've had 2 or 3 rallies now with the alt-right, and each one is getting a little nastier. And there's one coming up in September, and I'll probably be there as a protester. Again, it's not my district, but Providence, it's a small state.
Yeah.
So,
now, would you say, the both of you, that this is pretty new since the Trump election, or is it ongoing?
Oh, this is new in Rhode Island. This is absolutely new since Trump. This is a 2016 onward thing. It's very new.
For me in my district, I saw my first neo-Nazi march down the main street of a neighboring town 30 miles away when I was 17. It's kind of always been in the background. Maybe they're a little bit more emboldened right now, but this area has definitely had an issue with those who moved to the area to try to create a white ethno state.
Or why did you stay there?
This is my home. This is where I grew up. There's amazing people working really hard to try to transform the community and make it better. This is, for too long, and it's been one of those areas where you grow up and you move away for opportunity elsewhere. And there's been some people who have been tough and stuck it out and been creating a thriving arts culture, startup culture, and we're hitting the point now where the city's now becoming cool. It's maybe on the way to becoming the next Austin, and we're experiencing gentrification and housing shortages, and the people who have been here because it's been an affordable, beautiful place to live are now being priced out. So we're starting to get the big city pressures, and I care, and I want to make sure that as this town grows in prominence, as my district has this massive influx of people, that we actually do it right and that we don't replicate some of the mistakes that we've seen in some of the other major cities.
We don't have any of that issue in my area. It is very rural. It's maintained about the same population, if not a little bit less. The towns look like they could, you could envision them being in the 1800s and the 1900s. They're old towns. We've had stagecoaches, go right through the town back in the 1700s. We have the oldest running country store in my town from the 1700s. It's an old district. There's been very little development. Some of that's good. A lot of that's good. We don't have any Burger Kings or McDonald's in my district. We have Dunkin' Donuts, but it's not growing at any rate. It's basically a commuter town. You live here and you work in Providence, or you work on South County at Quonset Point, where all the industrial militarization is, or, you could work in Connecticut, or you can work in Massachusetts from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
So but it's by doing that, it's also maintained its rural, with rural sanctity almost. So for the most part, there's been a few more houses that have gone up. But as far as development, it's pretty much hasn't really changed a lot since I moved there. I'm not from Rhode Island. I'm from Massachusetts, but I've been in my district since 1992. And
Mhm.
for the most part, it hasn't really changed a whole heck of a lot. But the power plant issue, that's a big issue. This is going to be the largest power plant in all of New England, in
Wow.
my town, in my town, in the town next to me. And it has, beautiful lakes, clean water for the most part, and it already has a power plant there. It already has a compressor station there, and they want to put in a second power plant. And that's what's uniting a lot of people together. But at the same time, we have people that don't want the power plant but want Trump, and it's like, it can be a challenge. It can
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. Well, we lost Jessa again. Hopefully she'll come back in. But what do you think of what Bernie Sanders has been doing since the election?
Oh, I think Bernie's been great for the most part. I think his Amazon bill is awesome. I think him coming out so strongly against Kavanaugh has been terrific. His staunch support for women's rights has been amazing. Most of everything that he's done has been good. Some of the foreign policy is an issue, and I don't think that's a surprise to anybody who's been following Bernie for the last 20 years. But for the most part, he's been our best advocate for progressive values in the, in Congress.
Yeah, when you dropped out, Jessa, I asked Lauren what she thought of what Bernie's been doing for the last 2 years. So if you care to comment, you can.
I just appreciate everyone who's focusing on the issues and not getting into the us versus them. And that's been one of the things I've really appreciated about how he's been championing what working families are struggling with.
Now that you've been running for a while, what advice would you guys give to any other people like yourselves who want to go into office to make a difference? What advice would you give?
For me, I would recommend setting up your network in advance. Show up, get to be known. Don't just decide you're announcing that you're going to run one day. Meet the people in the labor unions, meet the people who are doing the work in your community. Basically, build your list of supporters, volunteer, show up, work for somebody else's campaign to really get a handle of what it is you're getting into. Because if you try to just announce or just show up last minute, it definitely makes it a little harder because then people won't know who you are and you won't have the support that's needed because no one person wins on their own. It is definitely a team. And build your team starting today.
And how about you, Lauren?
I agree. And I think, unfortunately, my campaign, because it was so late in the game, I am running into those issues where a lot of people don't know me, even though they're familiar with my name because I was on the ballot, obviously, for maybe not obviously for 2016. When you run as a delegate, you actually get on the ballot in Rhode Island. Different states do it differently. And so my name has popped up there. But, because of the district itself, whereas canvassing is kind of out of the question because it's too spread out that people especially in Coventry, I know they don't know me. People in Foster probably don't know me as well. And my area it's very tough to bring out people at different events, even though that's been something that we've tried. So, it's definitely a learning experience. My campaign was one to give people an option in November more than anything else and to start something.
Yeah.
Because we have nothing. So this is a start. I'm hoping that this will be the start of having, a coalition of people running together, having, discussions, bringing in people, having forums, getting people involved. The biggest thing is apathy in my district. People it's really hard to get them out and to get them to care even about issues that are important to them. So
Yeah. Well, I
That's
know
what,
that in this country in general. I think that in Europe, people are much more educated about issues. They're educated about their government. We don't teach civics in school anymore unless you take AP government in high school. You don't even really know how the government works. And people are just kind of trained to be workers and consumers in this society, not really citizens. And I think that's a big obstacle to overcome. And I don't know, that starts in so many places. It starts in the schools, it starts in the home, it starts even in the government itself. I think government kind of likes to keep people ignorant. So it's just this little club that they have control over. But the key, and we're going to end the show the way we started it out, is that we just have to have more regular people like you guys and like Carrie Evelyn Lewis and some of our other progressive friends who are winning in office, representing regular people. So I'll leave you each the last word if you want to say one more thing about your campaign, how people can help. I've been putting up your Facebook pages throughout the show.
I'm just going to ask people to just get involved. Find a campaign, either phone bank for something remotely or get involved locally. And chances are the people who are watching this are going to be a little bit more on the involved end of the spectrum. So maybe it is they need to pull in a friend. Because it is definitely something to where the more of us that get engaged, I'm seeing it here in Eastern Washington, that when you do year-round organizing, when you're involved in the party and make the party work for you, that we're seeing results, and we're seeing it to where we could have our largest Democratic majority in the state in decades. And it's because we've actually been working on the ground and building those relationships and showing up every day and talking about issues that actually impact regular people. And I'm very hopeful for what November could look like. And no matter what, we've at least started a trend, no matter what the results are. And so I'm looking forward to sharing our results with what we've done across the state.
Lauren?
well, one of the things that I've also been working on is changing the Democratic State Committee in Rhode Island. So we've been able to, bring in 15 new people already. We're working on another 15 people, and that's where it has to start. Everything has to start from the ground up. And I think that's important, is not only to get people involved, but to get them interested in going, not even running for town council, going to town council meetings, not even running for school committee, going to school committee meetings. Just get people to do one of those once a month. Get more people so you don't see the same faces at these meetings all the time, because that's what they want. They don't want participation. They just want the status quo, regardless if it's Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. These local committees, school, town, zoning committees, they want the status quo. They don't want anybody to rock their boat. And people need to rock their boat, to stay engaged, to learn what the issues are, to find out if this large solar farm is going up in, a mile away from you, how is it going to affect you? That type of thing. People need to get involved. And like I said, they just need to know where these meetings are, attend one or two a month. And if everybody did that, if you got 100 more people to do that, you will change the system. But until then, things aren't going to happen on a very quick basis.
All right. Thank you both very much. I wish you great luck in your. I'm getting some feedback, and I'm going to let you go now and promote my next two shows. So thank you very much for being on.
It was great being here. Thank you so much, Lauren, for this opportunity.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
On Sunday night, I'm going to be interviewing Elena Pop, who is the executive director of the Eviction Protection Network here in Los Angeles. For many years, she's an attorney, and it's really funny. And I'll talk to her about this on the show. I first met her when I was being considered to be on a jury for a case that she was trying. And I kind of ended up disqualifying myself from this jury by basically announcing to the judge that I was going to vote for the tenant no matter what. And I Googled her on Facebook. I Googled her when I was sitting there, and I saw that she represented tenants, and I was like giving her the thumbs up, and they took me back into the hallway, and she said, you can't be looking up lawyers on Facebook. Anyway, I got disqualified from that case, but I met her and I followed her work, and they just had a wonderful victory with a group of tenants that she's been representing that this corporate landlord has been trying to evict. So I want to talk to her about their victory and about this fundraiser that she's having. It's a 15th year, a quinceañera, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. It's the same as when a 15-year-old when a young girl turns 15, she has a I better learn how to pronounce that before Sunday. But anyway, they're having theirs to raise money for her work because this case with the tenants that I was talking about depleted a lot of their resources. So I want to promote her and her organization and see if we can raise some funds for her. And then next Thursday morning, I'm going to be reporting from San Francisco, where I'm going up to cover the Global Climate Summit that Jerry Brown is convening, because there's going to be a lot of disruptions. As people who have been following my show and following progressive politics in California know, Jerry Brown, while he positions himself to be a big climate leader, has refused to ban fracking. And as he criticizes Trump for offshore oil drilling in federal lands, for opening up offshore oil drilling in federal lands, he is actually drilling in California waters. I'm sorry, I said lands, I meant waters. And also he has approved the permits for 20,000 new wells in the 8 years since he's been in office. So we call him Big Oil Brown. He's taken almost $10 million from the oil and energy interests. He won't shut down Aliso Canyon gas storage facility, which had the largest methane leak in U.S. history 3 years ago. I covered a protest at his sister's house that the Save Porter Ranch group was doing along with Food and Water Watch, because they reopened that facility and people are still having all sorts of horrible health problems. And the thing is that Jerry Brown's sister, Kathleen Brown, sits on the board of Sempra Energy, which owns the facility, and she has made over $1 million in that service on their board. So until my next show, I want to say again, thanks for watching. Please share this show and keep fighting.